Continuing the lesson on the lake that burns with fire and brimstone, as we discuss the doctrine of hell. I explained in the previous lessons how the doctrine that the lake that burns with fire and brimstones is the traditional ideal of hell that has been sewn into Western theology via the Catholic Church, via the paganism that was mixed into the Catholic Church, is not hell a burning fire that burns people for eternity. And I've explained how that concept came from the pagans and not from the apostles. Inasmuch as I have made that statement, that comes from the pagans and not the apostles, it is obliged upon me to explain what the apostles actually taught about the end. So therefore, I'm going to take the apostles, the three writing apostles, the three leading apostles, Peter, Paul, and John, and I'm going to explain to you what they taught about what happens at the end. And I should be able to show you, you should be able to see, that neither one of them said that it was a burning fire in hell that people would go to and burn forever and ever in it. But what it appears is that each one of them taught the annihilation of all things that were lost in Adam, that the new creation might be ushered in. I will start first with the Apostle Peter, who in his epistle, in 2 Peter chapter 3 and verse number 10, he describes what happens in the end in his epistle. When he talks about, he talks to the saints and tells them not to be worried about what the scoffers were saying, because the scoffers were saying that the Lord was not going to come and not going to judge the world. And Peter's argument was to them that the Lord was going to come and the Lord was going to judge the world. And he took them back and he tried to show them exactly what was going to happen. What was going to happen is just like what is going to happen is just like what did happen. He explains to them, he takes them back in that chapter and explains to them that even though the scoffers say there's not going to be a judgment, there's going to be a judgment. And he points his audience back to the judgment that was in the pre-Adamic world. He takes his audience back and he says, the world that then was judged. It was judged and it was covered by water. And nothing survived from that world. That world was done away with such and so annihilated that we have no evidence left of what it was like. We only know that it was there because the apostle tells us. And he explains it as the anointed and insightful apostle, and tells us that the world that then was was covered and destroyed by water. And so then he ends almost like that kind of a statement, and just like that, this time the world is going to be destroyed by fire, and the earth shall melt with a fervent heat, and the elements that are therein shall be all burned up. The world will be destroyed, and all things that are negative will be annihilated. They will be done away with. This is at the culmination of the ages. This is the end. This is the end that John was talking about when he talked about in Revelation 20:10. This is the physical reality of what John symbolically spoke about. The difference between the two accounts is that in John's case, he is symbolizing the destruction of all things that are evil, including sin, the devil, and all deceit, false prophets, and death itself is destroyed. John does not describe the destruction as much physically because he's using a symbol, the lake that burns with fire and brimstone, which is an annihilation. Just like the fire and brimstone that came down in Sodom and Gomorrah, it done away with that city, those cities, and it done away. It's more or less a getting rid of it. And the way Peter describes it is that it is burned up. Now we must be careful to notice that when he says burned up, that burning up is a burning up of annihilation and getting rid of it, that it won't be anymore. It's burned up. This is the end. And so this is the description of the Apostle Peter pertaining to the end that does not contradict the description that the Apostle John gives. They both have in common the annihilation of all things wicked, all things evil, and that this annihilation, this judgment, this burning is the full details of what happens to the wicked and this world on the end. And as I said in the previous lesson, and as it is taught concerning John's Revelation 20:10, that it is actually in the context of the getting rid of these things so that we can go into Revelation 21, which is the new heaven and the new earth. So Peter picks it up and says, after the annihilation, there shall be new heavens and new earth. I hope that you can see the correlation and you see what the apostles' doctrine is on this. Both of these two apostles were showing that the annihilation of everything that was in the fall, the destruction of everything that was in the fall, and then the ushering in of the new heaven and the new earth. So get rid of the old, get rid of everything pertaining to the fall, and then we can ensue, or we can go in as God brings in the new heaven and the new earth with none of this going into it. And that is Peter's description. His only description of the end in the Bible is the description of the annihilation of all things evil that coordinates and is saying the same thing that the Apostle John is saying in Revelation 20 and 10. In our next lesson, we will show that the Apostle Paul gave the same account. And this is the apostolic doctrine on the combination of all things Adam. We will bring.
What we have just studied is that there will be no hell where people are burning forever and ever. That is not the lake of fire. The lake of fire is a lake of annihilation that ends. It burns up everything that comes into it, then it is destroyed itself.